We create this circle with each other today, honoring the wisdom of our Indigenous people and seeking to build a more faithful and respectful partnership on this land and in this place. And whoever we are, wherever our week has taken us, whatever we have done or failed to do this week, we're welcomed into this circle to share the warmth of love's embrace as we gather together in this place. We sing our way into community. We come to this time and place in response to the creativity and sacredness of life. To rekindle the flame of curiosity, hope, and deep wisdom. To renew our commitment to work for a more just and compassionate world. A lot of practice. And here we are on the Goldilocks of our galaxy, neither too close nor too far from our great day star. Here we are again in the gift of morning, the gift of newness, the gift of a new day turning toward its light. And we come, turning our spirits toward all that illuminates our spirits, ancient and contemporary wisdom, song and prayer, comfort and challenge, and the courage born of community. As we take our place in this moment between getting here and being here, let us open to the light that calls us into our deepest hope and our highest humanity. Let us open to the possibilities born of this day's brand new light.
Piece of wisdom this morning from the book of Luke. Jesus told the crowd, "Avoid greed in all its forms. Your life isn't made more secure by what you own, even when you have more than you need." Then he told them a parable. There once was a rich farmer whose land produced abundantly. He had a great harvest. The farmer mused to himself about what he would do. His barns were not large enough to store such a harvest. Then he did know. He would tear down his barns and build bigger ones. All his grain and goods would go there. He'd have riches in reserve for years to come. Finally, he could relax. Eat, drink, and be merry. And on that very night, he died. All this accumulated wealth, all this stuff that the farmer had collected, whose would it be now? This is a parable passed down to us from the first century Jesus tradition, a story about something that never happened and is always happening.
This is a commentary on a consumer-based economy. The gift of sabbatical gave Dawn and I an opportunity to do a lot of traveling since we saw you last. We've been to South Africa, and thanks to Emmanuel and the hospitality of his wife Athanasi, we were in Rwanda. I've been home to the Maritimes. We've soaked in time at our prairie lakes and mountains. We've traveled by air. We've ridden rails. We've clocked thousands of kilometers on roads of all descriptions. and we've logged a whole lot of miles on our feet. We've met truly amazing people, been awed by stunning scenery, and the creatures who make their homes in the wild of their habitat. And I don't know about you, but for me, travel has a way of unmasking some of my deepest fears. In the safety of my home, I'm a minimalist. The fridge doesn't need to be full. The cupboards don't need to be crammed. I love empty drawers. I prefer the closet half empty. But in the vulnerability of travel, I'm always focused on having enough. Do I have enough fuel to get to the next service station? Do I have enough food in my backpack for the next 5 days in the backcountry? Do I have something dry to put on when I get wet? Do I have something warm when I get cold? Do I have something cool when it gets too hot? Do I have enough local currency to buy the things that we need? Will they take a foreign credit card at the next toll booth? Do I have a strategy to stay safe on these streets that are known for their crime? How much longer before it gets dark again? Will we find a place to stay tonight? Will the restaurants or grocery stores still be open? And so on, and so on, and so on. Travel has a way of unmasking our fears and confronting us with our illusions and piercing our preconceived ideas and challenging our assumptions. And whether we ever leave home or not, traveling through life does exactly the same thing. It has this way of unmasking our fears, confronting our illusions, piercing our preconceived ideas, and challenging every assumption. And maybe that's the timeless truth. The ancient story Chris read for us a moment ago unmasks for us. There was this legendary, prosperous farmer who had a record-breaking harvest. And what to do with all that surplus crop? Convening a meeting of the Holy Trinity of me, myself, and I, he devises a plan. I'll tear down my barns and I'll build bigger and better ones. I'll store all my grain and all my goods. I'll have a safety net for the lean years. I will never have to worry about having enough ever again. Some would say he was a prudent businessman. Others would say he missed the opportunity of a lifetime. The chance to make a difference for his community. The chance to redeem some of his exploitation. The opportunity to stimulate a new economy of abundance in place of the old economy of scarcity. But the story isn't a critique of wealth, because wealth is evil. It's a story that emerges out of the context of first century Roman-occupied Palestine, where one only becomes a wealthy farmer on the backs of poor peasants. One acquires land by lining this pocket and that, positioning oneself to get this peasant's land when he becomes so burdened with debt. Debt designed by the empire to make him landless, and then this shark is poised to snap it up. So now with his exploitive windfall, he has choices to make. He can perpetuate the system that served him well, or he can subvert it. He can take care of himself, or he can benefit an entire community with his windfall. What is he to do? Well, there was once a rich man with brand new barns, filled to the rafters with enough food to feed an entire town for a year. What was he to do? He had a great business plan without any succession plan. When all too soon, death, the ultimate democracy, came calling. That which makes equals of us all came to a farmer with a great estate and absolutely no legacy. While he was so busy preparing for a tomorrow that would never come, he missed an opportunity of a lifetime. He missed living a life that could have inspired others for years to come. He missed the chance to make a difference in his community. Amid his drive to address his own illusions of scarcity, he missed the opportunity to confront the myth of scarcity that drives inequity. He missed the opportunity to address, even in a small way, the reality of scarcity for so many around him. It's so easy in our culture to be seduced by the illusion of personal security. And it's difficult to see that I will only be safe when you are safe. That the problem is not that there isn't enough to go around. The problem is we feed a system that is designed to only benefit a few and always at the expense of the many. The problem isn't that there isn't enough to go around. The problem is that we participate in a system that is structured to ensure that not enough will get around. And it's not about charity, it's not even about sharing. It's about equity and fairness and justice. Those values that are as endangered as any species on the endangered list. There was once a man with a brand new barn stuffed to the rafters, full of grain enough to sink a ship, living in a world where many couldn't imagine either a barn or a ship. They just need bread for today. What to do about those who are praying, "Give us this day our daily bread." There was once a spiritual community in southwest Edmonton that received a small but not insignificant windfall. What were they to do? They could burn their mortgage and deposit $500,000 into a savings account for a rainy day to come. Or they could dream and discern and do something that could make some difference for some of our more vulnerable members in our society. So they talked and talked and talked for months until they achieved a reasonable consensus about the priorities of need they saw around them. And then they invited their community to submit ideas of programs and projects to address those needs. And they received more than 20 amazing ideas about how to make a positive difference in the world. Had their barn been even fuller, they would have shared their windfall with every single one of those ideas because there were no bad ideas there. They were all worthy of support. Collectively, they discerned the ones that might be the best to address first and share their windfall responsibly. And the story could end right there. And that, my friends, would be a tragedy. We're in the middle of a story that will not be finished by presenting checks. This story will only be faithfully written if today is yet another beginning. There are so many ways to address the genuine needs for food and housing, for meaningful work to do, for refuge as a newcomer coming to a safe country and a welcoming community. So many ways to address freedom from discrimination, from fear, from allegations. So many ways to bring dignity and hope, and most of them are not answered with our checkbooks. They're answered with our lives, with our participation in genuine democracy. Not what passes for democracy, genuine democracy, with our compassion, and with our subversion of economic systems that depend on inequity and depend on exploitation, and with our commitment to future generations that we will not poison our environment to create jobs for ourselves. In a small but not insignificant way, we put our money to work by investing in our community. But the long work of living differently, of being a spiritual community that seeks to celebrate diversity, engage life with spiritual depth, inspire compassion, and make a difference in the world, doesn't end with an envelope. It's our raison d'etre. It's what it is to be a spiritual community. It's what it is to be spiritual beings in a human experience. And it asks for our time and our money. It asks for our effort and our energy. It requires partnerships and participation. It means that we have to let go of our illusions of personal and collective security and address the reality of scarcity for so many in our world. It means that we resist being sidetracked by our fear of scarcity, by our fears of a changing demographic, by our fears of being part of a Christian community that's undergoing a great shift in what it means to wear that name. And it asks for our creativity and our commitment. It asks us to find a million ways to Sunday to keep sharing the harvest of hope. It invites us to pause now in this silence, to consider how we can do it one action at a time, one day at a time, with heart and mind and wills that are awakened and challenged and strengthened.
The Southern Homes Society always be a legacy of this congregation. It was started in a time when many churches were constructing buildings and when this community decided instead for a time to invest in the community. 2 residential homes were purchased to create safe housing for Indigenous women moving to Edmonton. Over time, these houses served as group homes for children in care. In its most recent years, the Southern Home Society was chaired by Alan Brimacombe, who joins us now to honor the decades of work of this society, the difference they made in countless lives of women, of children, and of families. When the Southern Home Society concluded its work a couple of years ago, the houses were sold and the assets of the society turned over to Southminster Steinhauer, the church that birthed that society. It's with great humility that we undertook a process to discern just what to do with these funds. And over the course of the last 2 years, we together agreed that much of this money should be given to continue making a difference in the community. Today is a celebration of that courageous and beautiful decision to continue investing in Edmonton, investing in people, particularly those who need it most. So as we share these gifts today, these grants, with the various agencies and groups that will make use of this almost $500,000, we do so knowing that our partnership is ongoing, that we look with anticipation in the ways that we'll continue working alongside these groups and agencies in the work ahead. On behalf of the congregation and with his vast experience with Southern Homes, I invite Alan to introduce these agencies and projects and groups being awarded these grants and present the representatives of each group an envelope and our best and most fervent support. So if you're representing one of those groups today, I'd invite you to come when your name and your agency is spoken about. And when you receive this grant, would you please stay up at the front with us, and we'll add to our group up here. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Chris and Nancy. We celebrate with the Edmonton Inner City Housing Society, which recently changed its name to Right at Home Housing Society. Today they are receiving a grant of $200,000 for a housing project to build 78 new units of environmentally, responsibly, and permanent social housing. I would ask that Cam McDonald please come forward. Thank you very much, Cam. Today we celebrate with Easter Seals Alberta. They are receiving a grant of $10,000 for the renovation of the kitchen at their McQueen residence, a home to 9 residents with severe physical disabilities. I would ask that Jody Zabludowski please come forward. Also today we celebrate with Bissell Centre, receiving a grant of $100,000 to revitalize the drop-in center, which serves as the gateway to support programs for employment, housing, mental health, and addiction services in the Edmonton inner city. Rob Fragosi, please come forward. We celebrate with Firefly in Schools. They are receiving today a grant of $50,000 to empower LGBTQ youth to challenge discrimination and become effective allies for diversity, equality, and human rights through participatory peer-to-peer workshops. Scott Rapoli, please come forward. We also celebrate today with Southminster Steiner LGBTQ and Allies Youth Outreach. They are receiving a grant of $16,600 to create and support safe and affirming youth and young adults programs to make connections and explore spiritual or artistic themes with peers. Tracy Cumming, please come forward. Also today, we celebrate with Southminster Steiner Refugee Support Team. They are receiving a grant of $32,500 to fund refugee sponsorship and support. Coming forward, I believe, will be Jacqueline Faust and Jackie Switzer. Today we celebrate with our own Southminster Steiner Media and Communications. They are receiving a grant of $67,000 to fund people and expertise to provide resources to publicize and extend spiritual community beyond the walls of Southminster Steiner United Church. Randy Langley, please come forward. And lastly, but not least, we celebrate with the Mission and Service Fund of the United Church of Canada, who are today receiving a grant of $10,000 for the national and global work of the fund, which supports education, community development, sustainability, and human rights. Gail Simonson, please come forward.
Thank you, Alan. This is a day to celebrate the work of the past, to honor the legacies that we have received. It's also a day to celebrate the decisions and the courage of the present, and a day that calls for the hope and imagination of the future that calls us to live into it. The past, the present, and the future are all embodied in this moment. May we find together the hope and the creativity and the courage and the tenacity to strengthen our partnerships with each of these organizations and others in our community who also made proposals to us that we want to find ways to connect with and to support. And we look forward with excitement to the work that each of you will do with the funds you have received this day. Thank you for your good work and for the ways you'll put this money to work in our community. Thank you.
As a way we embody our intentions, our prayers for the past, present, and future, may we speak words of intention and prayer today, as we pray these words not dissimilar to words that Jesus prayed. May we say these words together. We embrace the sacredness of life with awe and reverence, and we commit ourselves to work for a more fair and just world. We seek to live with deep intention, that all may have enough for today. May we let go of all the guilt and regret that encumbers us, and embrace relationships of trust, offering and receiving forgiveness as a way to freedom. May we live examined lives, inspired to find meaning and purpose in our living, working to transform every challenge
into an opportunity to grow and thrive. May it ever be so. Amen. We have a great opportunity to continue this legacy of giving and supporting, of being together in community, and engaging ourselves with all the circles in life that we do. Our friends, our communities, the places where we engage our spirits and our energy in the life to make our lives and the lives of others better one day after the next. And so as we gather this day's offering, we remember that this is not just about supporting the life and work of this circle, although it is that. It is supporting the many programs that we support in our building through the week. The kids that were here this week, ages 6 to 11, that had a fantastic time in kids camp this week, that made of themselves a real group from Monday to Friday, and who in a moment you'll get to see some pictures of the week. When we open our building to be a food camp, a food bank depot, when we open our building to a Learn to Cycle group that's been using our space and our yard, when we open our building to all who come through the doors looking for just a little bit of help in a difficult day, this is our support. This is our day-to-day mission, Monday through Sunday. And we do it with joy, and we do it because we can. So let's gather the gifts and the offerings, the time and the energy, and celebrate it. As we've gathered, we've shared story with each other, we've shared wisdom with each other, and recognized of all that we have in our life, we have so much more to give than we have to receive. We recognize of the great wisdom in tearing down our barns, not to build bigger ones, but to share what's inside. When we reach the end of our spiritual gathering every week, we blow out this candle. It represents that the light goes with us in many different forms. It represents maybe that we pass the torch from one to another, at least for a month or so. It represents that we go into this week with great light, with great hope, and we go with great love in our hearts. May it be.